So Jai Bhim and Namo Buddhaya to all of you. We are going to start with book 3, and this book is one of the important books of the Buddha and his Dhamma. It's about what the Buddha taught, and Baba Sahib Ambedkar has given the gist of the Buddha's teachings, and the importance of this book is in understanding the basic teachings of the Buddha, and it gives us a framework of how we can further study the Buddha and his Dhamma. So book 3 consists of 5 parts. The overall heading of the book is what the Buddha taught, and the 5 parts are: part 1, his place in his Dhamma; part 2, different views of the Buddha's Dhamma; part 3 is what is Dhamma; part 4 is what is not Dhamma; and then part 5 is what is Sadhamma, or philosophy of the Dhamma. So this remarkable classification, particularly in part 3 and part 4 and part 5, gives us a clear understanding of what is the Dhamma, what Buddha taught, and what Buddha didn't teach, what is not Dhamma, and lastly, what is Sadhamma. So this classification, I think, is very unique to study and practice the Dhamma, and we are going to look at all of this and give a lot of time to study this book 3. Part 1 and part 2, if we look at them, it's about the Buddha's place in his Dhamma and different views of the Buddha's Dhamma. That is part 2. So today we are going to look at the Buddha's place in his Dhamma. And part 1, the Buddha's place in his Dhamma, consists of 3 sections. 1, the Buddha claimed no place for himself in his own Dhamma. That's number 1. Number 2, the Buddha did not compromise. The Buddha did not promise to give salvation. He said he was Margadatta, wayfinder, and not Mokshadatta, giver of salvation. The Buddha did not claim any divinity for himself or for his Dhamma. It was discovered by man for man, by man for man. It was not a revelation. So when we look at the section 1 of the part 1 of the book 3, that's what we are going to look at today. And it's about the Buddha had never claimed any place for himself in his own Dhamma. Now, if we do the comparative analysis, like what Baba Sahib Ambedkar has done in this particular part of the book, we can understand that different people have made different claims, and Baba Sahib goes into that as to what Christ has claimed. So what Christ has claimed is that he is the prophet of Christianity. And he is not just the prophet of Christianity, but he is also the son of the God. So that means the figure of Christ is very central to Christianity. You cannot have Christianity without Jesus Christ. Okay. And if we look at the verse number 3, Christ also laid down the condition that there was no salvation for a person unless he accepted that Christ was the Son of God. Okay, so if anybody would like to have salvation, they have to accept, they have to acknowledge that Jesus Christ was the Son of God. So you see, the Christianity cannot be divorced or separated from the personality of Christ. Now, if we look at the Prophet Muhammad of Islam, he also claimed that he is not the son of the God, but he is the prophet sent by God. And he claimed that he is the last prophet. And if people do not accept that he is the last prophet, there is no salvation for them. So if you look at the comparative study of the founders of of Christianity and the founder of Islam, we can see that they have carved a place for themselves in their religions. Without them, the religion cannot stand. The salvation is simply not possible. But if you look at Buddhism, and that's a big question for us, is Buddhism possible without the Buddha? Like as Baba Ambedkar has showed that Christianity is not possible, the salvation is not possible without accepting that the Christ is the Son of God, or in Islam, it's not possible to get salvation if one doesn't accept that Muhammad is the prophet and the last prophet. But similarly, the question arises in Buddhism, is it possible to have Buddhism? It is possible to have Nibbana without acknowledging the Buddha, without accepting the Buddha as some kind of a divinity. And I think this is very interesting. What Baba Ambedkar says, it sounds very controversial at the surface, but if we look deep into it, it has a very deep teaching that Baba Ambedkar wanted to give us. And of course, a lot of people say that Buddhism is not Buddhism, and there is nothing like ism in Buddhism. The Buddha himself was not a Buddhist, and so on and so forth. We hear all the time. But what Baba Ambedkar is trying to say is this, that the salvation doesn't lie in the hands of any other person, even if however great they are, however big they are. Our own salvation has to be undertaken by our own efforts, by our own means, by our own energies, by our own vigor, by our own continuous engagement, by our own striving, by our own struggle. And I think this is very significant, that the freedom of an individual doesn't lie in the hands of anybody. The individual has to make efforts to free themselves. And I think this is very significant. In the psychological terms, it is said that there are two types of personalities. Some believe that the locus of control lies outside, and some believe that the locus of control lies inside them. And this is very significant. If we believe that the locus of our life, our freedom lies elsewhere, then we don't have to make efforts. But if we believe that, if we know that the freedom lies in our own hand, the salvation lies in our own hand, then we know that we have to make definite efforts. So as far as Buddhism is concerned, Buddha is concerned, he said he made no such condition to call him the son of God or prophet or whatever, because there are reasons that Baba Ambedkar has given as to why such is not the case with the Buddha, because the Buddha's Dhamma is not a revelation. It is not revealed by somebody to the Buddha. It is not revealed by so-called God to the Buddha that this is how the world is. But the Buddha, with his own efforts, has discovered the reality of the existence. And therefore, the Buddha's Dhamma is a discovery. It's not a revelation. While we look at the other religions, they are the revelations given by his so-called higher authority. And these prophets or the founders of the religions have become the conduit for the salvation of the humanity. Such is not the case with the Buddha's Dhamma. Buddha never claimed that he's a divine person. He only claimed that he's a natural son of Suddhodana and Mahamaya. So that is why we know not a lot about the Buddha's life. And that is a very significant point Baba Ambedkar has made, because we have Tripitaka, 3 baskets, which is a huge volume of literature available to us, the teachings of the Buddha, the sutras and the gathas and the jatakas and whatnot. So much of a literature is available on Buddhism. It is said that the Buddhist literature is many times bigger than the literature of other religions. And we attribute all those teachings, particularly that which has been handed down by the Pali tradition, as the Buddha Vachana, Buddha's own words. And that's the voluminous literature, voluminous teachings of the Buddha available to us. But we don't have the biography of the Buddha. And that's a very significant rational point, that why do we have, if they wanted, if the disciples of the Buddha wanted, they would have produced a very nice biography of the Buddha. They could reduce, they could write down the suttas, they could write down the words of the Buddha. It would have not been difficult for them to attempt to write the biography of the Buddha. Why it didn't happen? And Baba Ambedkar has given the reason as to how the Sutta Pitaka came into existence. When Mahakashyapa was presiding over the congregation, when all the monks assembled together, they say all the Arhant, 500 Arhant got together, and Ananda recited the suttas and then asked the assembly, Mahakashyapa as a president, asked the assembly whether what he said is right. And the assembly accepted, and that was codified as the Buddhist text. And similarly with the text of the Vinaya Pitaka, Upali was asked. We have seen the story of Upali, who was a barber, and he was ever present whenever the ceremony of ordination took place that time. So, of course, Upali knew the teachings concerning Vinaya. So we have the Sutta Pitaka, we have the Vinaya Pitaka, and of course there were these short formulas that the Buddha has given, which are called the Matikas or matrices, which was further developed into Abhidhamma Pitaka. So the seeds of the Abhidhamma Pitaka was already handed over by the Buddha to his disciples. And we know the process that there was, of course, the art of writing present at that time. It was not completely a society believing in the oral tradition. But there were people who found recitation easier than writing them down, and generation after generation, the texts were recited by the particular branch of the monks. Those people who recited Sutta Pitaka were called the Suttantikas. Those people who recited the Vinaya Pitaka were called the Vinayadharas and whatnot. The Abhidhammikos, those who recited the Abhidhamma Pitaka, they were called Bhanwar, a very traditional Buddhist term for those who recited the sutras after sutras and handed over to the next generation like that. Then when we have this literary tradition available in the Buddhist tradition, why the Buddha's life was not written? That is a very important question that Baba Ambedkar has raised. So the reason is that the Buddha had carved no niche for himself in his religion. Okay. And I think the Buddha was asked to recommend a successor. He said, but Buddha, after you are gone, who is going to lead us? Who is going to be the leader? The Buddha said that the Dhamma will be leader. So I find this 29, 30, 31, 32, 33 verses very interesting and very remarkable. In verse number 29, the Buddha said, the Dhamma must be its own successor. You don't need the authority of the people. Principle must live by itself and not by the authority of man. If principle needs the authority of man, it is no principle. If every time it becomes necessary to invoke the name of the founder to enforce the authority of Dhamma, then it is no Dhamma. Such was the view he took of his own position regarding his Dhamma. That's why you see the Buddha kept the Dhamma at the center of it. We see that Buddhism has developed into many different forms and they are not against each other. In the Buddhist tradition, if we see that the Buddhist philosophy was developed in all different ways. I think there might not be any religion which has developed in all different ways like the Buddha. So many philosophers have come in Buddhism. They have tried to expand the various teachings of the Buddha in a language that will be communicable to the people of that time. And this is very significant that the Dhamma stands on its own. The principles of the Dhamma doesn't need the invocation of the authority of a man all the time. Like the word is permanent. We don't need the authority of people to claim that. But in certain religions, we need the authority of the people to compare. See, if we look at the Vedic Brahmanism, the Shabda Praman, the authority of the words, is considered to be the highest. Whatever is written in the Vedas, because it's written by the great rishis, it's infallible. You cannot question it because they are being told by the great rishis and they are the words of the God. While in Buddhism, such is not the case. Such was never the case in Buddhism. That's why Buddhism is bound to uh, bound to develop, evolve into many sort of teachings, in a sense that the principles remains the same. If we examine any Buddhist school anywhere in the world, we will find that the principles remains the same. What happens is the difference in the presentation of it. And that's very, very interesting point. So now when we say that the Buddha has no place in his Dhamma, then how do we relate to our chanting when we say Buddhang Saranam Gacchami, Dhammang Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami? Because here we take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in the Dhamma, we take refuge in the Sangha. So how do we make sense of this? What do we do? What do we say when we say Buddhang Saranam Gacchami? This is very interesting question. And I think we have to dwell on that. So here, when we say Buddhang Saranam Gacchami, do we take refuge in the historical Buddha? Do we accept the Buddha as our ultimate refuge, as our ultimate sort of an island, an ultimate guide? So who is the Buddha? Then the question comes to the level to know who is the Buddha. What is the Buddha? And we when we study further, we will see who is the Buddha. What is the Buddha? So when we say, I take refuge in the Buddha, who do we take refuge to? That's a very pertinent question. So who do we take refuge to? Do we take refuge in Siddhartha Gautama? Or do we take refuge in the Buddha as a common noun, not as a proper noun? Is the the Buddhahood available to everybody?
Dhamma.
Can everybody become the Buddha? What is it to become the Buddha? How do we become the Buddha? What are the means to become the Buddha? I think these are all very important questions. So let's start with the premise that the Buddhahood is not just confined to Siddhartha Gautama. Any human being who makes efforts like the Siddhartha Gautama can become the Buddha. And the traditional definition of the Buddha is very interesting. It says, Yo bujjati so buddham, Buddho. Whoever understands, whoever knows is the Buddha. That means the possibility of becoming the Buddha is available to every human being, provided that they are ready to make efforts, provided that they are ready to cultivate their minds, provided that they are ready to go forward, provided that they are ready to walk on the path that the Buddha taught. So, the Buddha, if you look at Baba Sahib Ambedkar's translation of Buddhang Saranam Gacchami, in Marathi it is said that me Buddhala anusarato, that I follow the Buddha. I would like to be like the Buddha. I would like to follow in the footsteps of the Buddha. So that means that the biography of the Buddha becomes critical for the Buddhists to understand. So though the biography of the Buddha is not exclusively done by the Buddhists, but in order to follow the Buddha, in order to be just like him, we have to know the life of the historical Buddha also. And that's what we have also seen in the Buddha and his Dhamma. In the beginning of in the book 1, we have seen the life of the Buddha. The life of the Buddha shines through the Buddha and his Dhamma and whatever Buddhist text we study. So even if the Buddha is not a son of the God, even the Buddha is not the prophet, to be like the Buddha is the aim of the Buddhist. To be free like him, to be compassionate like him, to be kind like him, to be, generous like him, to be, energetic like him is the aim of the Buddha. To understand the Bodhi, as we have seen, is the aim of the Buddha. To become free like the Buddha is the aim of the Buddhists. So Buddha is an ideal. Buddha is somebody who needs to be followed, who we need to walk in his footsteps, as Baba Ambedkar said, Anusaran. That means we place our lives in a way to emulate, imitate, follow the Buddha. Now, following somebody is different than believing that they are going to free us. And I think that is very significant point that Baba Ambedkar has made in this particular section, because we have to know what is the place of the Buddha in Buddhism. And therefore, it's very important for us to know who is the Buddha, his life, his qualities, his striving. And that's why the biography of the Buddha is so appealing to us. Because Buddha as a historical person was a remarkable human being who has striven hard in his life to get what he could. That ultimate commitment to know the truth that we see in the life of the Buddha should be an inspiration for all of us, not only for the Buddhists, but for the humanity. So let's look at the meaning when we say the Buddhang Saranam Gacchami. What does it mean when we say that, I'm going to follow the Buddha till I attain to enlightenment, or till I die, till my last breath, I commit to follow the Buddha. There is, Buddha Vandana, Dhamma Vandana, and Sangha Vandana. And there is this gatha which says that till the end of my life, or till I attain to enlightenment, I will follow the Buddha. I commit my life to the Buddha. What does it mean? It means to live like him. It means to follow the biography of the Buddha. And in order to follow the biography of the Buddha, we should know the biography of the Buddha. We should know who he was, how he strove, what he did, and of course, what he taught. And Buddha is somebody who taught the Dhamma with his own example. Buddha's life is not in contradiction with the Dhamma he taught. So there is no contradiction between what the Dhamma was and how the Buddha lived. He lived the Dhamma. He was the living embodiment of the Dhamma. He was the living light of the teachings that he taught others. He didn't teach anybody anything that he didn't practice himself, that he didn't follow himself. So what happens, like we look at the example of Baba Ambedkar. Now we know from a lot of sources that Baba Ambedkar was taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Every morning he was chanting Trisarana and Panchashil. He was having so many Buddha images in his possession. He was very fond of the Buddha, to the extent that he loved Buddha so much that the love for the Buddha shines in his life. So if there is an ideal, if we have that opening of a heart towards that ideal, we try to, become receptive to their teachings. We try to become receptive. We become receptive to what they taught. And therefore, when personality like Baba Ambedkar has taken refuge in the Buddha, in the Dhamma and in the Sangha, when we look at that, we see that taking refuge, or even to commit oneself to follow the Buddha, opens up something deep inside us. It opens our minds and heart and our lives for something which is, noble, for something which is higher, for something which is which is which is which is which is secure, which is conducive to happiness, which is conducive to joy. And that's why when we look at the other Buddhist teachings, we see that the faith has a very definite role to play. But this faith is not based on any speculation. This faith is not based on any belief system. It arises out of the practice that one does, that one begins to see the results of the Buddha's teachings. And the more one practices the Buddhism or the Dhamma, the more one try to emulate or aspire to become the Buddha. So let's look at this, that when we say Buddhang Saranam Gacchami, we aspire to become the Buddha ourselves. This is a very high ideal, but I think Buddhism is all about, demanding more from us. Buddhism is not the religion for the lazy people. It demands a lot of efforts from us. It demands the efforts at the level of the Siddhartha Gautama. So I think this particular section at the beginning of what the Buddha taught is the section of responsibility. That the responsibility for our development or our salvation, for our Nibbana, for our attainment of the truth, for seeking the truth, doesn't lie with others. It lies with us. So what Buddha taught is the path of responsibility. The Buddha taught the path of responsibility. So if anybody asks us what the Buddha taught, I think the first thing will be to take the responsibility. Become responsible. Don't leave your work to other people. Do your own work. And I think that's a very remarkable, subtle teaching that Baba Ambedkar has put in the beginning of this very interesting book, number 3, What the Buddha Taught. So what the Buddha taught is that we all have to take our responsibilities. We can all become the Buddha if we walk on the certain path. That's what we are going to look at. So I would say what Baba Ambedkar has taught through this particular section about Buddhism is that the Buddhism is the path of a personal responsibility. It is a path of responsibility, the Dhamma of responsibility. And the second section, which reads like this: the Buddha did not promise to give salvation. He said he was Margadata, wayfinder, and not Mokshadata, giver of salvation. These two words, that Buddha is a Margadata, not the Mokshadata, communicates so much of the power of Buddhism. Like if you look at the so-called other religion, the prophets are always Mokshadata. They want to give you salvation. Only condition is that we have to have certain belief. We have to have certain set of belief system, and if we accept that, they will ensure that you have salvation. You are saved. So who is the Buddha? And that's what makes this second section very fascinating. The Buddha is not Mokshadata, he is a Margadata. And here Baba Ambedkar goes into the discussion that Buddhism is not the religion of a revelation, it's a religion of a discovery. And then Baba Sahib says that the Buddha never claimed that he was a prophet or a messenger of God. He repudiated any such description. A more important point than this is that his religion is a discovery. The Buddha's religion is a discovery. It is not a revelation. As such, it must be sharply distinguished from a religion which is called revelation. And those who are joining the philosophy of Hinduism class, they will know what we are talking about in terms of revelation here. So Buddha is a Margadata. So who is the Buddha? He is a Margadata. He is showing us the way. And this verse number 10, salvation must be sought by each for himself, by his own effort. So the freedom has to be sought by everybody by our own efforts. Actually, this section from verse number 12 to verse number 32 or 34 is very important in terms of how the Buddha taught, how the Buddha trained the people. And I thought I might go through it in a passing, because this is also very interesting as to how the Buddha taught. So of course, there was a Brahmin Moggallana who goes to the Buddha and asks him certain questions. So like verse number 14, Brahmin Moggalan asked this question to the Buddha. Master Gautama, one gets a gradual view of the storied house, a progress, a graduated path, and so on right up to the last step of the stairs. Just so is the progressive training of us Brahmins, that is to say, in our course of study in the Vedas. So he's saying that we have a gradual sort of training, progressive training. What is your training? He says, the Brahmin Moggalan. And the Buddha answers it. The Buddha answers it saying that, he has a way to gradually train the people. Just like take the case of a clever horse trainer. He takes a thoroughbred in hand, gives him his first lesson with bit and bridle, and then proceed to further course. Just so, Brahmin, the Tathagata takes in hand a man who is to be trained and gives him his first lesson. So what is the Buddha's first lesson? Be virtuous, abide, and constrained by the restraint of the obligation. So the Shila, what we call Sila in Buddhism, they are also the limits. So Panchashila gives a limits to our ethical limits, to what we can do and what we cannot do. So what the Buddha teaches them in the beginning, to be virtuous. So we have seen the path of righteousness, the path of purity, and the path of virtue when we studied the previous section of the Buddha and his Dhamma. So what the Buddha teaches them in the beginning is, this is the Buddhist path. The Buddha teaches, he says, come you brother, be virtuous, abide, constrained by the restraint of the obligation. Become versed in the practice of right behavior, seeing danger in trifling faults. Do you undertake the training and be a pupil in the moralities? You see, be the people, be a pupil in the morality. So be the student of morality, be the student of ethics. That is what the Buddha teaches in the beginning. Buddha doesn't start from the very lofty sort of philosophies. He says, first you try to become the student of the moralities. That means Shila. As soon as he has mastered all that, the Tathagata gives him his second lesson thus. Come thou brother, come you brother, seeing an object with the eye, be not be charmed by its general appearance or in its details. Persist in the restraint of that dejection that comes from craving caused by the sense of sight uncontrolled, this ill state which would overwhelm one like a flood. Guard the sense of sight, win control over the sense of sight, and so do with other organs of sense. When you hear a sound with the ear, or smell a scent with the nose, taste a taste with the tongue, or with body touch things tangible, and when with mind you are conscious of a thing, be not charmed with its general appearance or its details. So this is in traditional Buddhist terminology, it's called Indriya Samvar. Because you see, all the word is created by, I won't say created, but we become aware of the word through our senses, our sense doors. And according to the Buddha's teachings, there are 6 sense doors: our eyes, ears, smell, nose, tongue, and body, because we touch, and also the mind. Because through mind, we try to make sense of all the data which is brought to us by our 5 sense doors. So according to the Buddha's teaching, the mind is also one of the senses. And we can look at the model of the mind that the Buddha taught, but that is not for today. Here, what is interesting is this, that after practicing the Shila for some time, after becoming the student of the moralities, after becoming the student of the ethics, the Buddha asks us to guard our sense doors, because the sense objects can move us in different directions. This is called Indriya Samvarshila, guarding our own sense doors. And Buddha says that we have to watch the sense doors. That's what is the mindfulness is all about. Watching the doors. So this is the second teaching, on the path. The third, as soon as he has mastered all that, the Tathagata gives him a further lesson. Thus, come thou, brother, be moderate in eating. Ahare particular sayya. It is called in Pali Ahare particular sayya. Earnest and heedful, do you take your food, not for sport, not for indulgence, not for adding personal charm or comeliness to body, but do it for body stabilizing, for its support, for protection from harm, and for keeping up the practice of righteous life. With this thought, I check my former feeling. To no new feeling will I give rise. That maintenance and comfort may be mine. So the ahar or the food has a different meaning in Buddhism. Also, there is a food for our senses. If our senses are deprived of the sensation, then our sense doors also crumble. So there has to be moderation in everything. So what Buddha is teaching here is moderation, not only in eating, but whatever we are consuming. So moderation in consumption. That's what the Buddha is telling here, teaching here. Then the further lesson he gives is abide given to watchfulness or mindfulness or sati. By day, when walking or sitting, cleanse your heart from things that may hinder you. By night, spend first watch walking up and down or sitting and do likewise. By night, in the second watch, lie down on the right side in the posture of a lion and placing one foot upon the other, mindful and self-possessed. Set your thoughts on the idea of exertion. Then, in the third watch of the night, rise up and walking up and down or sitting, cleanse the heart of things that may hinder. You see? So this reflection or Buddhist meditation is about cleaning the heart of the things that may hinder our progress. What a beautiful definition of meditation that Baba Ambedkar has given here. Cleanse the heart of the things that may hinder. So hindrances, we have of course seen 5 hindrances in the previous discussions that we had. So after this training of mindfulness, the Tathagata gives him a further lesson. Be possessed of mindfulness and self-control. In going forth or going back, have yourself under control. In looking forward or looking back. In bending or in relaxing, in wearing robes or carrying robe, and bowl in eating, chewing, testing, in easing yourself, in going, standing, sitting, lying, sleeping or walking, in speaking or keeping silent, have yourself under control. This is the biography of the Buddha in a nutshell. This is how the Buddha lived. And this is what we are supposed to live like. Then when he is possessed of self-control, the Tathagata gives him a further lesson. Come thou, brother, seek out a secluded lodging, a forest or root of a tree, a mountain or a cave, or a mountain grotto, a charnel field, a forest retreat, the open air, a heap of straw. And he does so. And when he has eaten his food, he sits down cross-legged and keeping his body straight up, he proceeds to practice the 4 ecstasies, the 4 dhyanas. Very beautiful. Now, Brahmin, for all brothers who are pupils, who have not yet attained mastery of mind, who abide aspiring, for such is the manner of my training. But as to those brethren who are arhants, because arhant doesn't need any training, they are already trained, they are gone beyond training, they are graduated, who have destroyed the asavas, who have lived the life, done their task, laid down the burden, won their own salvation, utterly destroyed the fetters of becoming, and are released by the perfect insight. For such as those, these things are conducive to ease in the present life and to mindful self-control as well. So this is the gradual path that the Buddha described: Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna. When the Prajna is the awakening of the vision that frees one. And in order to do that, one has to train oneself, become the student of the ethics, practice mindfulness, practice satipatthana, and practice self-control, and gradually understand, achieve the arhanthood. When one becomes an arhant, one is free. He's just like the Buddha. And the Moglan asked the question further, but tell Master Gautama, do the discipline disciples of the worthy Gautama, do all of them win the absolute perfection, which is Nibbana, or do some fail thus to attain? So the Buddha says, use the example of somebody, who wants to travel, and he comes to us and he asks, where is that particular place? And if we give them a proper direction, and if they don't walk on that road, they are not going to go to that city. The Buddha gives the example of the city of Rajagraha. And he says that, I can tell that this is the way to go towards Rajagraha, but if people choose not to go that way, they will never reach Rajagraha. He says, just like this. Here is the full statement that he does not promise salvation, he only shows the way. What do I in the matter, Brahmin? Tathagata is the one who only shows the way. So who is the Tathagata? Tathagata is the giver of the way, is the Margadata, is not the Mokshadata. And what is salvation? He raises the question. With Muhammad and Jesus, salvation means saving the soul from being sent to hell by the intercession of the prophet. With Buddha, salvation means Nibbana, and Nibbana means control of passion. Very interesting. Very interesting definition. What is Nibbana? Is the control of passions, because these passions are flaring up all the time. The fire is, burning all the time. The Buddha says, quench the fire, control the fire. What promise of salvation can there be in such a Dhamma? This is the question that the Buddha raises. And of course, the last thing, the Buddha did not claim any divinity for himself or for his Dhamma. It was discovered by man for man. It was not a revelation. So every founder has claimed certain divinity for himself, for themselves, and for their teaching. They say, my teachings are divine origin. They are coming straight from the God. They are coming straight from something higher. Okay. So Jesus claimed divinity for himself. He claimed that he was the son of God. Naturally, his teachings acquired a divine origin. Krishna said that he was the God himself. And the Gita was his own word. He said, I am the God. So forget questioning me. The Buddha made no such claim either for himself or his sasana. He claimed that he was one of the many human beings, and his message to the people was the message of man to man. He never claimed infallibility of his message. The only claim he made was that his message was the only true way to salvation as he understood it. If anybody would like to be free, if anybody would like to attain to the highest truth, the Dhamma is the only way. That's what the Buddha said. And what was it? The verse number 9. It was based on universal human experience of life in the world. So it was not based on some speculation. It was not based on some revelation. It was not based on some daydreaming. It was based on universal human experience of life in the world. That means any human being existing anywhere in the world can attain to what the Buddha attained, because the Buddha has attained to what he attained was on the basis of the universal human experience of life in the world, because Buddha has experienced life deeply, and that's how he has understood. He said that it was open to anyone to question it, test it, and find what truth it contained. No founder has so fully thrown open his religion to such a challenge. Part 1 of the book 3 is thus concluded, and one can see how deep is the Buddha's teachings that has been presented by Baba Saheb Ambedkar to us, that the Dhamma, what the Buddha taught is to take the responsibility. What the Buddha taught is don't rely on him. Rely on on the Ashtanga Marga, rely on the Marga, rely on the path he has shown. And thirdly, it is not something divine. It's based on the universal human experience of life in the world. So with this with this reading today, we will throw open our class for the further discussion. So what do you think of this, this book, this part 1 of the book 3? What is your general impression of that? Anybody would like to say something, comment on it? Like, how does it feel even to, think about these concepts or teachings or the presentation of Baba Saheb Ambedkar?
Sir,
although, yes, Umesh.
no, please carry on.
No, you go on.
So I found it as a foundation, and from where we can build up our not only our life but our thoughts. They are laid down the foundation. Means if that base is strong, then the coming means path of Buddhism can be followed very firmly. Means, this is my take, sir. I have taken that.
Right. So it's very foundational to Buddhism to take responsibility. We cannot evade our responsibility.
Yes, sir.
Good.
And
Yeah,
this
one
is
thing
the
what
this is the only responsibility that we have to take, is that our foundation must be very sound.
Great.
yeah, the only thing like what profound is like when he says that he is the son of his parents, and like even in his religion, what his religion was there at that time, he also rejected that. And whatever the Buddhism we call, it was not even there at his time. It was just like started after his death, what he says, right? So that is what the greatest thing or nobility he has.
Right. Anybody else?
Although Buddha discovered the Dhamma, still he need not claim that he was everything, and we should follow him as a Buddha. What he did, he said that we must follow his Dhamma, and Dhamma is Margatata. So, follow Buddha. We say that Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Means we are taking refuge in his Dhamma. Whatever Buddha has told, we are taking refuge in Dhamma and not directly to Buddha.
Of course, madam, we are taking refuge in the Buddha because we want to be like him. We want to emulate. We want to walk on his footsteps. And he is an ideal for us. That's what we want to become. That's what we aspire to become. So we of course take refuge in the Buddha. We of course, take refuge in his teachings. And like, there the Buddhahood is like a path of evolution, in a sense that we gradually see something unfolding within us. And we know that definitely we are going to, if we keep on practicing this, we are definitely going to lead, to that direction. So it's like feeding into each other. So we make efforts, then we realize, then based on that realization, we make further efforts, then we go forward like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's why
Whatever
Buddha So that's why Buddha said that my Dhamma is beginning, is conducive to welfare in the beginning, in the end, and in the middle. So the moment we start practicing the Buddha Dhamma, start walking on the path showed by the Buddha, we get certain insights. And when we get certain insights, we further walk. The further insights we get, more clarity we get. So, so that's ultimate clarity, the ultimate vision that the Buddha had, that's a guide to us. So we take the refuge in
Buddha.
Buddha also we take refuge, because Buddha is just like us, but he's not like us.
Yeah, although he was having so much riches and everything was with him, he sacrificed everything and the enlightenment.
Yes.
By striving.
And we can definitely take the example of Baba Sahib Ambedkar. When we think about Baba Sahib Ambedkar, we don't think about his just body. We think about his aspirations, his insights, his commitment, his compassion, his wisdom. So when we say the words like Jai Bhim or whatever, we actually are invoking the qualities of Baba Sahib Ambedkar.
Yes.
Or when we say Namo Buddhaya, we are saying we are trying to be like Buddha.
Yes. True.
Yeah,
Mahasanji?
I think Baba Saheb Ambedkar in this chapter has given that example of Mogalam, no?
Mogalan, yes.
Mogalam, that interaction between the Tathagata and Mogalam. Baba Saheb Ambedkar has shown us how person can lead to perfection step by step. First of all, we have to be careful about our character. Then even eating and all that. Step by step.
Yes.
Like how the horse rider, controls his horse like that.
Yeah.
So it is a, kind of stages. Baba Saheb Ambedkar has described in this, how one can attain perfection in his life, step by step. And this also displays the democratic bent of mind of none other than Buddha himself.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to say.
Very profound, very profound.
Shall I add certain things to this?
Yes, please. Sunil.
Jai Bhim to all. Actually, Buddha wanted to say that in every individual, there is a seed of Buddha. Only one has to nurture it, explore it step by step, and then you will find that you yourself are becoming fully Buddha.
Yes.
So that is the meaning of that first Buddhang Sharanam Gacchami. So we have to start from there only. Everyone has the credibility and capability to explore himself. But to go to that stage, one has to follow Dhamma and Sangha, the code of conduct laid down in Dhamma and Sangha. So this is the way to achieve that Buddhahood.
Very true, very true. That reminds me of a conversation between Mulk Raj Anand and Baba Saheb Ambedkar. So when Mulk Raj Anand went to see Baba Saheb, he greeted Baba Saheb with Namaste, and Baba Saheb Ambedkar greeted him with Om Mani Padme Hum. And Mulk Raj Anand asked him, what is this greeting? So he said, it's a Buddhist greeting, by which I mean, let the lotus in you awaken.
Yes.
That means I wish you enlightenment. Isn't it? So I think it's a very deep meaning there, that the Buddhist, see that the seeds of enlightenment or the Buddhahood is in everybody.
It is already there. It is already there. Only we have to nurture it and allow it to explore.
Yes.
Whatever the unwanted things are there, whatever dirt and garbage is there, we have to throw away.
Yes.
And purify. More and more you purify, you will glitter like a gold.
Yes.
All that dirt one has to pass through the fire to burn out the unwanted materialistic things, and then you are that pure glittering gold will come out. So that is Buddhahood. That is Buddhism, Buddha. So it is within ourselves.
Nicely said.
Another thing is that Buddha has thrown the challenge to others to question his discovery.
Yes.
It is open.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the democratic.
Other religious leader, they say that you cannot question our the religious text. They are infallible. But here Buddha says you can question anything. So he has thrown open the challenge.
Yes. That's true. That is true. That's true.
So much confidence and such boldness he was having.
Yes.
And the faith, self-confidence, we can say.
Yes. Very true.
Because he himself had discovered that.
Yes. So he
Because
knew
knowing that it is true only.
It's because it's based on the universal human experience of life.
Based on his own discovery.
Very true, very true, very true. Anybody else?
I think whatever Buddha has given us in the form of Buddhism, that is a his own experience. He has experimented on his own, and he has studied that dukkha. Like somebody takes a topic for PhD, that suffering, how the humans are suffering. So that he might have thought before going to forest and doing meditation and all those things. So that might be something like that. We can. So it is a very much more higher than any PhD or DSc degree.
That's true. That is true. That is true.
And no one can achieve that after Buddha. I think nobody has achieved that much. So it might be hundreds and thousands of PhDs.
That's true.
With on his own, he has experimented, and finally the conclusion was that how to get rid of the sufferings. That is the conclusion of his whole thing. We can say it is a thesis which Buddha has given to the human being.
Yes.
For their welfare.
Yes, excellent. Anybody?
His own body.
The summary of the section 2, part point 18 is Buddha tells the beginner or learner, his pupil, to follow Panchashil and Eightfold Path.
Yes.
Good. Very good. Anybody else?
I wanted to tell something but forgotten now.
No problem.
You can remember when you are getting.
Madam, Vaishali madam, Neha, Rakshita, Pankaj.
Hello, Mangesh.
Vaishali madam.
One thing I have learned. One second. As he mastered all that, be moderate in eating. So what Buddha taught is a very good point to be noted. Be moderate in eating.
Yeah.
That means be away from illness and everything. And what I have learned that you should not eat, that is, if your stomach is a dustbin.
Right. Good point. Very good point. He taught moderation in everything. Be moderate in everything.
So Buddha was a dietitian.
Yeah, good. Very good point.
He avoided extreme steps.
True.
Middle path only. That's why it is called middle path.
Good.
He avoided two extremes.
Vaishali madam, weight loss.
Tai.
Okay, anybody would like to say anything? So maybe Samiksha, Nikhil, Dishant, Sunny, Harsh, Arvind Bhai. Sunny?
Mangesh bhai, it is very nice explanation, Pankaj here.
Okay, Pankaj.
How I interpret this, this Buddhism is purely the, if we see as a teaching, it is only for intellectual people. Initial thought, you need some intellect to go ahead. Now the question arises in the mind, the intellectual mind, like Dr. Ambedkar, who went into Buddhism and then get on flourishing after entering into it. And then later he handed over to, the lowest class in the India, or let us say who are intellectually very backward those days. He has given all responsibility to those. Now, on this reading, 4 or 5 pages, it is very clear you have to have some initial intellect or understanding Buddhism, or even to understand his teaching. Now, see, if you analyze this, there are other religions. The people who are educated, who are, who have a free mind, or let us say who have mind, they can approach to free mind by approaching Buddhism, or by, let us say, by accepting the teaching of Buddha. But still there is a twist. They cannot come out of their, a preoccupied mind.
Hmm.
So this what I say, this twist or this ghat, we can say, it is difficult to unfold,
Hmm.
and only free mind can unfold it.
Hmm.
Free mind and determination. That is what I took, from these 4-5 passages or 4-5 pages.
Yeah. Even 22 oaths, that is why Baba Sahib has given.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But because, see, Buddhism is not something which is abstract or, in a sense, not, understandable by anybody, because it's based on as the phrase goes, is based on the universal human experience of life. So this, as far as universal experience of life goes, all the human beings have certain experience in the life.
True.
So because all the human beings have certain experience in the life, and most of the experiences that we have are universal in nature. Otherwise, we couldn't communicate with each other. Otherwise, we couldn't talk across the cultures if there was not something universal in the human nature. So whether people are, educated, or people are illiterate, or people are poor, or people are rich, it doesn't matter, because they are bound to, undergo certain experiences which are universal in nature. For example, the experience of, losing our beloved ones, or the experience of, losing something that is very dear to us, or the experience of meeting something which is not, which we don't like, or the experience of, the structural suffering, for example, the caste, or the experience of the, suffering due to change, due to various sort of ailments. So these are all very common, and the experience of, identities, in terms of, some degraded, identities which are termed degraded, and which are termed to be, like good identities or whatever. So you see this, because of this universality of the experiences of with the life that Buddha had, his teaching itself becomes universal, isn't it? It becomes, understandable, or his goals become achievable by anybody who wants to make efforts. For example, student of ethics, as Baba Ambedkar has put it, the pupils of the moralities. So morality is not something which needs an abstract discussion. We can see we get angry all the time, irrespective of our intellectual reckoning. We become greedy, irrespective of who we are. So yes, intelligence has a definite role to play in Buddhism, and that intelligence can be cultivated. But also, basically, the Buddha talks deeply about human experience, particularly about human emotions. For example, raga, dvesha, and moha, they are called the fires. They are like emotions which are unbridled, uncontrolled emotions,
True.
isn't it?
There's a-
We have to rein it, and it's same for everybody, whether we are a king or a pauper, or we are a Nobel Prize winner, or an illiterate person. It's the same,
Correct.
and that's why Buddhism has got such an appeal to everybody, irrespective of who they are.
Very nice, Mangesh. That is what, from your this last 1 minute, it is very clear. Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha means individual, and then the path, and then the social structure. That is what Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha can be taken by me. Yeah. Of course, one dimension only. Yeah.
Yes. So if there is anything last point before we conclude.
Sir, I want to share something. Hello.
Let's go on.
See, I read somewhere that in China, one king had called a congregation of religious head conference. So there, all religious heads in the world had gathered together, and they were to, tell the audience what is the teaching of their religion. One by one, all people had, all the religious heads had explained their teachings. When the turn of Buddhist head came, he simply recited one gatha. Sabapapasa karana kusalasi upasampada sachida paryoda panangetang buddhanusasana. and he finished his lecture.
Very good.
Then king said, "Oh, you have finished your such a simple thing?" He said, "Yes, it is very simple, but it is very difficult to practice." So this is the Buddhism is in this Gatha only.
Very true, very true, very true, very true, very true. Very true. Thank you, Mahasenji. That was a nice comment at the end. And
yeah, I think one last point, what he
Ashwai.
pointed out,
Ashwai.
I think that was the same scene what it was experienced at the time of Samrat Ashoka, when he wanted to find what religion he wants to have for his kingdom. He also called the same type of conference, right? And he heard all those teachings from different religious heads. And then finally he accepted Buddhism as his state religion. So that is what exactly repeated there, right? I think it is.
Very good. Good. All right, then. See you next week. And thank you for joining today. And we will continue to go on further.
Yeah.
Jai
Thank you.
Jai
Thank you. Bye. Jai Hind.
Namo.
Philosophy of Hinduism.